down the Yahoo slate for DFS on Sunday. Alex, what's going on?
Not much, man. Excited to play some more football because, like everyone else, aside from maybe a couple of guys, I did not get the big money in week one, but it's a new week, man, and there's another chance every single week. I'm excited, especially on Yahoo, because I think for people who enter more lineups, this $1 million baller has 150 entries. So since this is a tournament which doesn't take any rank, you can make more money per lineup than any other site. And I'm looking forward to taking advantage of that by entering 150 lineups. And I think that it will make the competition a little tougher, but that is it's totally compensated for because of the no management fees.
Yeah, exactly. The change, if you hadn't heard, Yahoo's gone to 150 max entries for their $1 million baller. But one of the advantages that you have over the pros, I think, this week as well, is that they don't have CSV uploads yet. So a lot of pros are going to be like, no, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to bother entering 150 lineups by hand, which is nice. So it's a bit of an effort, right? Would you say that's going to cut down on the amount of pros playing?
Absolutely, and I forget sometimes that not everyone is as kind of insane as me, man. Just grinding it out, being willing to stay up
That's right.
super late every night. But yeah, I know a lot of guys that will totally deter them from playing this contest, and you're gonna find that Yahoo for the next couple of weeks is the iron is the hottest it's ever going to be. I expect it to be the site with the weakest competition for the foreseeable future because they have a great way to get new players to play from season long. But right now, where you still have to type in your entries, I think it will be a little bit easier sledding until they introduce more features to make mass multi-entry easier.
So the last time we talked, some exciting news for all the Canadians watching, but I got word on Sunday morning, I think, from our NHL editor, Jake Harvey, that Yahoo is now allowing Canadians to play on their site, which is very amazing. So I immediately got on there, maxed out as many entries as I could, and popped the top 25 in the $1 million baller. So first time on Yahoo, you can have some success. And our own Ship My Money was in contention for a while there. Manny Laura was in contention. So I have a feeling that these tournaments are a little softer, and you should be heading over. This should be the first tournament I think you play in if you're going to play in any kind of major GPP with no management fees.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. I think that top 25. I mean, there's 50,000 people in this tournament, so that is a tremendous finish. And congrats to Adam as well. I know you got top 10, so that's pretty sweet.
It was close, man. I needed Kenny Golladay to fight off Tremaine Brock there, and I would have been pushing it to the T10, but Tremaine Brock was just too difficult. He stopped that touchdown pass in the end zone, and that was it.
Yeah, you got a lot closer than me, man. I would have needed all the players in my lineup to do a little bit better for me to have a shot.
Nice. Well, there's always next week, and that's what we're here for. So yeah, if you haven't head on over to Yahoo and check it out. You can use promo code AWESOMO to get free $30 in YSRP rewards points. We also have a link on our site. You can go to Emacs $1 Million Baller column tomorrow and find that link. He breaks down the slate for Yahoo every single Saturday for a free article, and you get just some free money to join up. So why wouldn't you do it? In addition to no rake. So there you go. Let's get into this slate. So I think what we did last week is we talked about some of the higher total games. We can talk a little bit about some of your favorite plays. And then after we kind of break down a few games, we'll head into some lineup building, some fantasy cruncher. Maybe we'll build a few lineups and maybe give people a chance to see a little bit about your process too. So first up on the slate, we have the highest total of the week. It's up to 53.5 points. Kansas City Chiefs at the Oakland Raiders. What are your general thoughts on this game? Are you going to be stacking it at all? What's your approach?
Yeah, I love the game. I mean, anytime you got Kansas City in a game, it's going to be they don't really dominate time of possession. They have they don't run like too many plays per drive, so they're going for the big bombs. and that will give Oakland more chances to put up some fantasy points. I'm a little concerned because Oakland's fantasy players are just so unproven as commodities. Darren Waller, I mean, it's a guy that he had like 20 catches in the league before last week where he kind of exploded. Tyrell Williams, he was a distant second to Keenan Allen on the Chargers for years. Now he's the number one on Oakland, so I'll be interested to see how that plays out in the long run. And I mean, Josh Jacobs had a tremendous game last week, but that was versus Denver. Kansas City is a whole different game.
Yeah, so you're right. I think that's a really interesting stat that a lot of people don't talk about is Kansas City potent offense, but 26th in time of possession because they score so quickly. And if you're 26th in time of possession, that means you're giving a lot of time of possession to your opponent, and that is a great recipe for a game stack. So the very first time this pricing came out and the very first look at it, I thought immediately that I was going to try and stack some of these Raiders against the Chiefs. So we have Derek Carr at $26. We have Terrell Williams at $19. We have Darren Waller at $13, super cheap. And Josh Jacobs has been bumped up a little bit to $21, but is still one of the cheaper backs on the slate. What do you like from the Oakland side here? If you were to stack the Oakland side, which direction would you go to?
Yeah, if you're stacking this game, I'm going to take those shots on the guys we mentioned. I mean, there are really only three guys: Josh Jacobs, Tyrell Williams, and Darren Waller. Let me see if I can dig up some sneaky plays. I mean,
little Jalen Richard action.
The Jalen Richard could be interesting if you're. So I'm trying to picture a situation where that would pay off. It would be if Oakland is like playing from behind, but they're still like putting up a lot of points, keeping Kansas City fighting for it.
Yeah.
I think Jalen Richard could be a nice addition to a Chiefs stack where maybe like they're playing from behind more, so you run it back with Richard. That would make a lot of sense. He is a decent fantasy asset. The other guys are pretty tough to get to, like Ryan Grant and Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
Those guys didn't play the full game last week. And because of that, I'm a little bit hesitant to play them because they're already not that productive when they're on the field.
That's the thing. Like these guys are pretty much nothing but deep flyers. So you all of a sudden you kind of have a pretty concentrated offense in Oakland. If Terrell Williams is your number one, Darren Well is your number one tight end and probably the number one red zone target, and then Josh Jacobs getting a huge carry or a huge workload. So I like a lot of the side of this Raiders side this week, especially given what we've seen from the Kansas City defense both in Week 1 and in 2018. This is one of the easiest defenses to play, one of the best defenses to target. So to me, this game stack makes a lot of sense. What are you doing on the Kansas City side of the ball? We have Tyreek Hill out probably 4 weeks-ish. We have Mecole Hardman possibly getting a little bit more playing time. His playing time certainly increased after Hill went out. We have Travis Kelce, who is going up against the Raiders' 32nd ranked tight end defense in DVOA last year. And then we have the priced up Sammy Watkins, who should get more share of the offense with Hill, but is also now being priced as an elite wide receiver. How are you attacking the Chiefs side of this game?
Yeah, if I'm game stacking, I'm interested in all the guys. Because we're operating on the assumption we're picking multiple players from Kansas City that Oakland's going to be competitive in this game. And the fact that Tyreek Hill is out just makes it much more viable to stack these guys up. Sammy Watkins is a guy that upon entering the league, everyone was saying he has the talent to be one of the best wide receivers in the league. Being behind Tyreek Hill on a week-to-week basis hurts his fantasy value because then he's the third dog in Kansas City. There just are too many mouths to feed. I don't think it's a talent issue. I think this is probably one of the healthier years he's started off in. So I really like Watkins to be one of the top wide receiver plays this week. And at $27 is a price I'm pretty interested in. Kelce at 30 as well. I mean, these are some of the higher priced skill position players, but I'm pretty confident that he's probably the tight end of the week as far as the highest projected. I'll also look at my actual projections to say for sure, but I think that he's a pretty proven fantasy asset.
Yes, he lit up the Chiefs in their Week 13 matchup. Had 150 yards, 10 catches, two touchdowns, I believe. And then they played again in Week 17, and the Chiefs all but eliminated were all or had all but clinched that division, and
Yeah.
were up early on the Raiders. So I feel like he didn't have a great game, but I feel like they probably took him out, getting him ready for the playoffs.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
One other guy you mentioned was McCole Hardman, and he's someone that didn't get a target last week. So I think that like people who aren't paying attention to the Chiefs probably will miss him. But he is someone I'm anticipating to be like that deep threat that Tyreek Hill normally would be. And he's $10 on Yahoo. To me, that's a no-brainer for a GPP play.
It's a great GPP play, right? So he's the bare min price. He's a speedster. Think Hollywood Brown last week. We probably won't see those results, but he runs a 4.340. He's a second rounder. He was a super popular pick in best balls and early on. If you did your draft by chance in July and you're a complete degenerate, you were probably pretty high on McCole Hardman because everyone thought of him as a like for like placement for Tyreek Hill. Now we get to see what he can do and if he does have that upside. But from what we've seen from this wide receiver class thus far, I think the early indications are that he's an excellent GPP flyer and that he's probably going to see an increased target share and probably be the greatest benefactor of the absence of Tyreek Hill. We have others in the fold on Kansas City, but they're not as exciting. You got your Aldrick Robinsons, your D'Anthony Thomas. So it's not like these guys are all we've kind of seen what they've had to offer, and it's really tough to get excited about them in your fantasy lineups. What about the running game here? Williams had 6 targets last week from Mahomes. He was second only to Sammy Watkins in targets. When you game stack like this, do you consider pairing Mahomes up with Damian Williams, or do you just kind of go with the non-quarterback running back stacks more often than not?
I'd consider it, especially for Damian Williams, because this particular situation, he's in a timeshare with LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy, having just joined the team recently, I guess it was like 2 weeks ago at this point, he probably doesn't know all the passing playbook at this point. So I'm expecting Damian Williams to continue to get a lot of the passing work. And he's effective in the pass game. He gets targeted a lot when he's running routes. And also, I mean, because of LaShawn McCoy taking more carries, passing makes up about half of his fantasy production in my projections. So I definitely don't like it as much as stacking up a receiver because it's half of the production instead of all of it that you're stacking. But I think it's a pretty viable play.
All right, one final question. Same sort of question for the Raiders side of the game. Would you consider, like we saw Josh Jacobs not involved in the passing game at all. We don't know if that's just a week 1 aberration or if they're just working the rookie in. Would you then completely avoid stacking Josh Jacobs in Derek Carr lineups, or would you have a little bit of him in those lineups?
I think last week they were playing from the lead, so I mean they're not going to dump it off to the running back a ton in that situation. Jalen Richard also barely got it on the field, so I'm just kind of taking that as that he just didn't run that many routes. If I pull up my numbers here, I'll see. Pro Football Focus keeps track of how many routes each guy runs. Josh Jacobs only ran 10 routes. Jalen Richard only ran 8 routes. And on the whole season last year, they averaged a running back running a route. Let's see, that's 7 out of 8 plays. So when they run passing plays, the running backs are running out there to catch the ball, and it just wasn't the right situation last week.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's move on to the next game of the week. Another excellent game. God, we got 2 really good games in the 4:00 Eastern slot, which is good because there are only 3 games in that slot. I don't know why the NFL does this and doesn't put a couple more games in the later slot, but here we are. The New Orleans Saints are 2-point dogs to the Los Angeles Rams. We saw the Saints in a bit of a shootout against the Texans. The Saints have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Certainly their trio of cornerbacks rated out quite poorly. All three were in the bottom 15 in PFF yards per snap allowed. This game has shootout written all over it. What are your initial impressions?
Yeah, I think that a shootout certainly is in the cards. It is NFL football, so you never really know exactly how it's going to play out. I mean, that's why game stacking is so good. Is some games just totally stink, and others really are amazing. You just don't know which games it will be before the week. I think the fact that it is a 2-point spread in favor of LA bodes well for their chances of having a competitive game, but that's not guaranteed. But like these teams both have great fantasy players on both sides, so I think that it should be a good one from a fantasy standpoint.
So let's start with the Rams quarterback here. Jared Goff, just pulling up your grades right now. We've got him as not great. $35 on Yahoo. Points C, value D. I'm guessing you're not starting too many lineups with him?
Yeah. Wait, who are we talking about? Goff, 35.
Goff, yeah.
Man, yeah, that is a really high price tag. I think the highest they go is about $40 for anyone. And Jared Goff, a good fantasy quarterback, but he doesn't really run that much. So that makes him not elite from a fantasy standpoint as an individual player. But when you factor in his targets, he can be really good. Cooks, Wood, Cup, Gurley to a lesser extent. I mean, these are all great players. So I think that you could make a stack work. That price tag on Goff is really going to drive people away from him, though.
Yeah, agreed. That actually might turn people off of this stack, and it might end up going under-owned on Yahoo. We have Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. The three of those guys have about a 98% snap share on the Rams offense. I think Cooper Kupp has the best matchup in the slot against PJ Williams. The Saints have been torched by slot receivers in the past. Robert Woods also spends a lot of time in the slot as well, and it looks like Brandon Cooks is probably going to get a little bit more ownership than them as well. He's also the cheapest of the three. I think people tend to gravitate towards Brandon Cooks because he has that GPP winning upside. If you were to game stack this and you were to play Jared Goff, or you had a couple lineups with Jared Goff in them, would you go to how many receivers would you pair him with? Would you go for two? Is there a scenario in which you might actually roster Jared Goff with all three Rams receivers?
Yeah, I think that in a really big GPP, maybe like stacking up the third receiver is a good idea, just because if you get three Rams skill position players and two Saints players to all excel in one game, then you have a pretty good shot at winning in GPP. The chances are relatively low, but when that goes off, you could easily take first in the baller. But these guys are all really expensive. Except I'm seeing Todd Gurley is only like $18, man. That's like extreme bargain.
Snap share. I just recently looked at his snap share, and it was like he still had like a 60% over Malcolm Brown, or 65% or something. I think because Malcolm Brown looked electric and got the red zone work, that people are discounting Gurley. So that's a little bit interesting, especially if you want to go to the other side of this game, stack up the Saints offense, and then bring it back with Todd Gurley.
Absolutely. I mean, Todd Gurley is one of my favorite plays this week because of that price tag. Last week he was $28, now he's $18. And as you're pointing out, I mean, this is not a bad matchup from a fantasy standpoint. The only downside is that the Saints are a good team, so they're going to be able to sustain drives more. Maybe there's less time possession for the Rams. But I think, man, that's the cheapest you're ever going to get Todd Gurley until maybe he's like 30 years old.
So you have him as a B for points and an A for value. I think I agree with that, especially because I think one of the aspects I like that just touched on is that he actually had a 70% snap share in week one, which is a lot higher than I think people think he had. So I'm guessing he might fly a little bit under the radar here. Maybe there's some name recognition, but I'm liking him more and more as we talk about this. And if that red zone regression after week one hits him, then he could have a big game for sure.
Yeah, I think that Malcolm Brown getting a touchdown. I mean, if Gurley got that, we'd be talking a whole different story. Sorry,
that's right.
I missed the lighting in this. I'm in a hotel, so it's a little harder to get it right. But So I think, man, it's crazy to me that he's that cheap. He's 22% owned projected on our website. So I think that's reasonably high, but not so high that I'm gonna be scared off taking one of the best fantasy players in a matchup that could be good for fantasy scoring.
Awesome. All right, I'm in. I love it. Let's move over to the Saints side of the ball here. Speaking of high snap share running backs, we have Alvin Kamara. He was at 75.8 last week against the Houston Texans. What do you think about Alvin Kamara this week against the Rams?
Yeah, I mean he's always one of the top guys. Maybe a little bit overrated because of how much they like timeshare versus Mark Ingram last year and this year Latavius Murray. But he, on the other hand, is like twice as expensive as Gurley. So that's a little bit higher than I would like for him. He's not really popping up over on my crunches for that reason. But I mean, he's an amazing player, and any given week he could be the top scorer where you absolutely need him for a tournament. And for that reason, I'm going to have some shares, especially if I'm stacking up this game.
Yeah, so Yahoo's done a really good job of pricing up this game, I think. Second highest total on the slate. This pricing for Kamara and for Thomas, we have them graded out really well, but their values are not great just because of their price points. That's going to scare some people off, eh?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this game is actually a lot harder to stack than you would think. When I ran a crunch, I only got 4% of Jared Goff and 1% of Drew Brees, and I think it's because these skill position players are pretty pricey. So maybe let's see what their Jared Goff is only projected for 0.1% ownership on our ownership projections. Drew Brees only 1%. I mean, that might be erroneous because we're just tinkering with the Yahoo projections at this point. But still, these are not guys that are going to jump out in people's optimizers. So I think that they might go under on.
Yeah, fair. It's tough. I just did a little mini stack here on and just stacked up some of these Rams receivers of Thomas and Kamara, and it's pretty tight. It's pretty hard to get to a full game stack here. You basically have to put in three Bearman players to go with them. So, I mean, if that's your thing, go for it. This is absolutely a game that could shoot out, but it's going to be tough. What about this Saints passing attack? Do you have any interest in some of these cheaper receivers? It looked like Ted Ginn was still holding on to that number 2 spot in the offense last week. He is just $14 on Yahoo, and Tre'Quan Smith is 14 as well. Do you have any preference between those two?
I think they're both good. I mean, the difference is Ted Ginn gets targeted at a much greater rate than Tre'Quan Smith when he's on the field, and targets equal money. I mean, Ted Ginn got 7 targets last week. Tre'Quan Smith got 2. So that's the trend I saw last year as well. So I'm going to keep rolling with Ted Ginn over Tre'Quan Smith for sure.
Ted Ginn as well, with his speed, always a threat to scoring a big play. So I love him in GPPs. If you want to get to this game stack and you don't want to spend up, I think he's a pretty good option. Do you have any interest in Jared Cook?
I mean, I see he's only 0.1% on our projections, so that makes me interested. Last week, he ran about 2/3 of the routes of tight ends. Josh Hill ran about 1/3. So that's pretty nice. Jared Cook is pretty good when he's on the field. He won't be on the field quite as much as some other elite fantasy players, but some as much as some other tight ends. So I don't have as high a projection for him, but he is a good player, and he's got Drew Brees passing him the ball. So I think he's a GPP player.
Excellent. All right, let's move on. Let's see our third. Oh, all right, we got the Sunday nighter here. 52.5 total. Philadelphia Eagles at the Atlanta Falcons. It's always nice to have that hammer coming home when you're in a GPP on Sunday nights. Any general thoughts on this game, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta is one of my favorite teams to play in fantasy. Philadelphia is a really tough or I guess I have the idea that they're tough. I guess when I look at my spreadsheet, they're about average. And I think that it should be a competitive one. There's only 2 point spread between the two teams, a high total. So I think this one should have some good fantasy plays in it.
Yeah. So one guy I just wrote up in a column that I wrote today was Julio Jones. This is a little bit of narrative, but he usually doesn't have two get back games in a row. His sub 60 performances are often followed by massive games. He averages six receptions and 110 yards in those after a dud game. He lit up the Eagles in Week 1 last year, and he gets a home matchup in the Dome against some pretty subpar Philadelphia Eagles cornerbacks. Do you have any interest in Julio?
Yeah, I mean, every week I want to be interested in Julio. He's one of the guys that can totally break a slate any particular week. The fact that he is $37 or $36, that's going to make him have a significant opportunity cost this week. So I don't think I'm going to have 12% of him, but I definitely don't blame anyone who has him, especially as part of a game stack here.
Would you be willing to pivot to some of these lesser owned guys? Do you like Calvin Ridley at all? Austin Hooper doesn't look like they're rating out particularly well for you in your projections.
Yeah, I think Hooper is someone I had a ton of in season long. He does get a good amount of targets, tight end. For Yahoo, though, they make it a little tough to get to him. $13 sounds cheap, but when you're comparing that to like a McCole Hardman or someone, that makes it a little bit tougher to not go more expensive or cheaper tight end, I guess. Calvin Ridley is a guy that he got a ton of touchdowns last year. I think that he's probably better than average at getting the touchdowns, but I'm not expecting that to really indicate his performance this year. So I think I'm kind of standing the ownership projections here that he's not that amazing of a play this week at 21. I'd rather go to someone cheaper who gets similar production or one of the studs.
So Calvin Ridley last year, yes, he's due for some touchdown regression. I think that's true, is for sure. But he also had like his two biggest games came against the Saints and against PJ Williams when he was running a lot in the slot, or against Eli Apple, I think. So he had a 1393 and an 8146, and that accounted for something like 40% of his yards on the entire season. So that's those outliers aren't going to happen every week. I still think he's good. I just think he might be a little bit overrated by people heading into this season. So I'm shorting him a little bit early on. But again, we have a great matchup. Slot corner for Philly is pretty weak. I think it's Maddox. So all three of these corners rated out pretty lowly last year, and that's the way to beat the Eagles if you're going to do it, is through the passing game. What about the running game here? Any interest in Devonta Freeman, Ito Smith? Ito Smith looks like he's coming up as a good bargain for you.
Yeah, Devonta Freeman. I mean, he just like totally put up a stinker last week, right?
Yep.
I remember I was playing Evan Silva, and he had Devonta Freeman. That was one of the ways I won. That's not much of a humble brag. I'm just bragging at this point. But the point is, I think people are salty about that, so they might fade him. But $17 is a pretty good price tag, and despite the fact that he's in a timeshare with Ito Smith, I think that's a reasonable price. So I could definitely buy in on that.
Nice, I like it. Let's head over to the Philadelphia side of the ball. We got Deshaun Jackson leading the team in targets last game out with 9. He finished with 154 yards and 2 TDs. Are you going to chase that at all this week, or are you going to let other people chase it?
I mean, he's a good player. Let me pull up the Philly Roots run on PFF here. He was on the field more than he was with Tampa Bay when expressed as a percentage of snaps for this game. And that's an encouraging factor, because last year my big problem with him is they would play him about 2/3 of the snaps to 3/4 of the snaps. And that kind of stunts his fantasy production. When he was on the field, he was an excellent player. So actually I have him projected to be the top receiver in this game. But because of the price tag, he's not really standing out as an amazing play. And also the recency bias that you mentioned, maybe some other guys are going to be going to him, hoping for a repeat performance.
A little Zach Ertz, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two tight ends this week that really stand out. We got Darren Waller, who we talked about, and also in the same game, Travis Kelce. And uh, those two guys are going to make it tough for me to get to anyone else, unless I'm just like stacking up a tight end or let's see what my numbers actually look like. But uh, Darren Waller is such an amazing value that it makes it tough to get to some of these other tight ends.
Yeah, I agree. I'm right there with you with Kelsey and Waller. So I'm not getting too much Ertz early on, but that could change. It might end up being a pivot play if the ownership doesn't get too crazy. What about these running backs? We see Darren Sproles, Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard. This is looking more and more like a three-headed monster. Any interest in any of these guys at all?
Not really. I mean, Philadelphia is always one of the toughest teams to peg running backs on. And week one really didn't provide any sort of indication that there would be a lead back. So I'd rather have a guy that's splitting time with one other guy instead of two.
All right, all right. I think that wraps it up for this game. Do you like? What's your just general last take on game stacks for this one? Are you less? Would you rank this third behind the previous two that we talked about in terms of your game stack priority?
Let's see. I'm actually like I have a ton of Kansas City, Oakland stacks in my initial crunch. It's much harder to get to Philadelphia, New Orleans, LA, and let's see, Atlanta. I'm not getting a ton of them either. So I think on other sites they might be a little bit better. I mean, we know these are going to be the games of the week, but they're priced up considerably on Yahoo. So I think I might like to some other more contrarian plays that are cheaper.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get to those in a little bit. Before we head on to the next game, just make sure you head on over to awesomeo.com. We have some great packages for the NFL season this year. You can get NFL Weekly. You can get NFL Weekly with Fantasy Cruncher. Fantasy Cruncher is a great add-on to help you build your lineups. We have promo code. You can use NFL Strategy to get half off your first week. We have ownership projections. We have player projections. We have player projections for everything. We have a top stack tool, which we're going to be going into a little bit later, that weights a likelihood of a stack to go off relative to ownership. So there's so much stuff over here that you need to check out if you're going to have success in GPPs and in these tournaments and just DFS in general. So please head on over, check us out. We got loads of free columns as well. Adam Pfeiffer's matchup column is live right now. It is in the featured spot on our homepage. He goes through every single game on the Sunday slate, breaking down all the matchups that you need to know about for your lineups. So lots of great stuff this year. All right, let's move on to the fourth of our fifth games. We usually go through the five highest total games in the slate. We have the New England Patriots favored by 19 at the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is an interesting one because I'd love to know what you're going to do with it. We were chatting about this morning, whether or not Belichick is the kind of coach who runs up the score. It seems like that. It seems that he is. Do you buy into this total? Do you buy into this 19 points? And how do you think New England approaches this game? Are they just going to run the ball with Sonny Michel? Or are they going to mix it up and just run up the score like Baltimore did on Miami last week?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, you hate to see a game that's not going to be competitive for fantasy purposes because usually you're going to have the most success with teams that have a worthy opponent. That's not to say Miami can't keep the game competitive in a perfect world. But most likely, I mean, given this 19-point spread, like you don't even see that in college games that much, unless it's just like Ohio State versus like uh,
Appalachian.
West Virginia Tech or something. So, like, this is really ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it. Um, but that I think it will be tough to really peg down who gets some of those 34 points. And I'm not huge on the idea that they're just going to run up the score through passing. So maybe Sony Michelle would be a good play. But I mean, like maybe they even like bust out Damian Harris this game off the inactive list, or they'll give it to Rex Burkhead. You know, like keep Sony Michelle fresh. So
So let's head over to these running backs then, because you mentioned Sonny Michel had 17 snaps, but he dudded 15 attempts, 14 carries last week. Rex Burkhead was really involved in the offense as well. James White, not so much. This is also shaping up like a little bit of a timeshare, but the Patriots' game plan changes week to week, and it's very difficult to peg them down and say this is a tendency that they have and will use this week, because anytime you do that, they're about to pivot and they will use an entirely different philosophy, run 80% of the time, pass 80% of the time, whatever they want to do, they're going to do it. So I kind of like Sonny Michel as the pivot here if he's not super owned, just because he does have that chance that Belichick decides the best way to beat the Dolphins is to run Sonny Michel 30 times this game.
I'm more skeptical. I mean, like when it comes time to like running backs, the problem is, I don't think that the week-to-week performance is that consistent, because what you'll see is a guy will run it like close to 20 times, and then that's kind of the limit, and then the coach will start giving those runs to other guys. So I think that if the Patriots are building up a 2-score lead, at that point, maybe you'll see more of a committee approach. I don't know exactly who will be the guy, because I don't think it will be James White. I don't know if they're going to have 4 running backs active for this game, but one of the problems is that at the end of the game, when you're up two scores, the game just kind of like grinds to a halt a lot of the time, and that just kills your fantasy production.
In past years, this had LeGarrette Blount 3-touchdown game written all over it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to these receivers. James White, 7 targets last week, 5 receptions. Rex Burkhead, 7 targets, 5 receptions, both heavily involved in the passing game. I'd expect that to continue. One of your highest graded players and highest value players of the week is Julian Edelman, who gets the double A grade from you at receiver. What do you like about Edelman this week?
Man, does he really get the double A? That doesn't. I'll have to look into that. But what's the price here?
$19. So maybe that's part of the reason why.
Okay, that is pretty cheap. So I think the concern I have with this game is that the Patriots will probably score a few touchdowns, and then in the fourth quarter, your fantasy point production stops. So I think his upside is a little limited unless you're playing Miami players, which is a tough pill to swallow. So I think that a completely excellent cash play. As far as GPPs, I'm not sure that there's a lot of chance he'll go for like 150 yards or more and a couple touchdowns, but the price tag is pretty reasonable, so I think he's a good play.
All right. What about the Miami side of the ball? I guess if you're going to play anything more than like one Patriot, you're probably bringing it back with a Dolphin or two. We just got word that Albert Wilson is out this week. Does that just leave basically Devontae Parker? Like, who is left? Mike Gesicki?
Yeah, I like that news. I'll have to add that into my spreadsheet real quick here.
Oh, I don't like that news at all. I've got Albert Wilson in 98% of all my best ball teams.
Dang. I like Albert Wilson, man. Last year, I think he even threw a touchdown when I had him one time. That was pretty sick.
Yeah, he's very underrated when healthy, but it's not looking like he's going to be healthy this year anytime soon. So
I think the guy running back with, I guess it would be Kenyon Drake. He's really the only guy that has enough fantasy points that he's really a value to a lineup in DFS. If you want to get a little sneakier, I mean, Devontae Parker, if you're going to play him on any site, it should be Yahoo, where he's $11. The minimum price on Yahoo is a little bit lower than other sites with respect to the salary cap, so I think that makes sense. But when it comes to other wide receivers, like Preston Williams, he's on my spreadsheet, but I've never heard of the dude.
He was great in the preseason, and he's getting a lot of hype, but it's it's a big difference between that and playing the Patriots in week 2 of the regular season.
Yeah. I prefer not to pick any Miami players. I don't know. Do you have any?
No, I think I'm not getting to any yet, and like if I were to, I think you're right. Drake's probably the most obvious play, though. I mean, Devontae Parker, 3 receptions, 75 yards last week. He's got that big play upside. Fitzmagic can still throw the deep ball. We saw that last year, so it's possible. Maybe at the end of the game, there's some prevent defense. Maybe Parker gets behind the defensive backs on one play, but I'm not super excited, and you probably shouldn't be too either. Like there's really no reason to go there. So.
Yeah,
Brock Osweiler's not starting, so no one's winning $1 million, right?
that's right, man. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, anyone can win $1 million, the Yahoo baller. But one thing I do like about Drake is that he runs the routes when it comes to him and Balaj. So I think if last week he ran 18, Balaj ran 8. So if they are down in this game, Liam Brady, maybe Drake will get some more passing or receiving attempts, and that could equal a nice performance.
All right, that wraps it up for this barn burner. I think a lot of people, unless you're a Patriots fan, you're probably not going to be watching that one. Let's finish things off really quickly with the Detroit Lions and the hobbled Los Angeles Chargers. Detroit, pretty terrible game last week, salting it, unable to salt it away against the Arizona Cardinals. What do you like from the Detroit side of the ball on this one, if anything? This total was a little higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit is a team that tries to control the clock a lot, but if they're playing a good team like the Chargers, that might not be an option. So let me pull them up on my spreadsheet here. 22 projected points. That's not all that great. I don't like the matchup that much. Chargers are a tougher than average team as far as passing. And only 2 guys are really standing out to be values in fantasy. I mean, there's TJ Hawkinson. He's kind of a wild card, but I prefer Waller. Galladay is probably the number 1 receiver on the team, despite Amendola kind of turning in a good performance last week. I mean, Galladay, he's got the package to get a lot of targets, short and long. So I think he's a good fantasy player, but I'm not thinking that this week is particularly exciting. And then Kerryon Johnson, pretty disappointing. Like the workload he got last week, really splitting a lot with C.J. Anderson and even J.D. McKissick coming in for some plays. So I think Detroit's pretty hard to play this week.
Yeah, it looked like almost like a timeshare there. C.J. Anderson getting 16 running snaps and C.J. Anderson getting 12, Kerryon Johnson getting 16. Yeah, it's tough to get excited about this team. The Chargers have a pretty solid defense despite the fact that they've got some injuries there. Are you getting anything on the Chargers side of the ball?
I think, let's see, the Chargers I'm getting a little bit more.
Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry out. We got Mike Williams probably out. Keenan Allen is a pretty good value, and he's going to have to be getting like a huge chunk of these targets, right? I'm guessing like Detroit's pretty tough to run on, so the Chargers are probably going to have to pass. I don't know where else this ball is going unless it's like the Travis Benjamin for those like random 80-yard scores he used to provide us with a couple years back when he was winning people PPs.
Yeah, I think Keenan Allen's a pretty good play. The Detroit defense isn't anything to really be afraid of. Chargers have one of the higher team totals of the week at 25. I think that Eckler is probably the more obvious play. He just kind of put in a performance that was remarkable last week, and that's probably going to carry over to this week as far as popularity, but who knows if he'll be able to produce that same kind of magic. So I think going to Keenan Allen, playing the pass offense of the Chargers instead of the run, that could be a good move.
All right, I like it. Should we build some lineups here?
Yeah, so let's build our cash line.
All right, awesome. So you got the screen up there. Let's head on over to
the value here.
Nice. Oh, Keenan Allen, right there. Oh, yeah. This is one game. I thought it was number 1.
Oh yeah. Oh my bad. Yeah. Okay.
Famous Jameis.
Oh, that was last night.
Whoa. How terrible was that game last night? It was so hard to watch. I feel like this pass interference or these pass interference reviews are just going to slow the game to a snail's pace, man. That last 5 minutes took about an hour.
Man, I was so tilted because I was trying to put the game on, but it's on NFL Network and ATT Universe like stopped carrying them. So now
No.
it's impossible for me to watch the Thursday night games, at least legally.
Well, you missed a lot of timeouts, a lot of stoppages. That's pretty much it. So, all right. So, who we liking here? A little Rex Burkhead?
Yeah, Burkhead's kind of interesting. I mean, I think Gurley would be the first guy I put in. Like that price tag is way too low.
Yeah.
So let's put in one guy at each position, I guess. So we go with Gurley.
Now, when you're approaching your cash game lineups, do you worry at all about correlation, or are you just like totally disregarding that?
I disregard it. I mean, like if someone is obvious enough for you to want the quarterback and receiver, usually like your opponents are going to have them too. So it's almost like you're not stacking.
So you would purposely avoid that stack, or you would just use them both and not even worry about it?
I wouldn't worry about it. Like for example, like say that this week Mitchell Trubisky is the cash quarterback of the week, and I also like Allen Robinson. I mean, if my opponent has Mitchell Trubisky, it's almost irrelevant. Like that, the fact that they're on the same team because Mitchell Trubisky's performance is going to affect the outcome. Only Allen Robinson's. So that's why I don't really worry about stacking, is because I'm expecting savvy opponents to also be on a lot of the same players.
Right, makes sense. All right, so we got started with Todd Gurley. We're going to receiver next.
Yeah, let's do. Who do you like?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Hey, that's interesting. That's a high value. Minnesota. I don't know if I trust him in cash, to be honest with you. But I mean, trust your projections. Let's not lie. What about Adrian Peterson? Are you expecting? Oh, we're going to receiver. Darren Waller, I think, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, let's put Waller in there.
And like, I got no problem going double tight end, but I don't know how you approach cash. Do you put a tight end in flex, or you just go opt for running back because they have the safer floors usually?
I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think that if there are two tight ends you love, like usually there's some pretty good reasons to it.
Fair enough. So one guy I do like Keenan Allen. I think that's a pretty safe play. It's certainly he's going to get a target volume, and I think we could probably go with Edelman too at that price, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, these prices on Allen and Edelman do seem remarkably cheap.
Yep. All right, we still got $25 per player left. We're rolling.
Yeah, let's put in our defense. That'll kind of give us some idea of how much money we'll have left per player. Looks like the Cleveland Browns are. I can't remember who's on the main slate and who's not.
Cleveland Browns won't be on that because they're on the Monday slate. So I think that just goes for Sunday. But yeah, we'll remember that for showdowns. That's for sure.
Okay.
Looks like the Green Bay Packers. That's doesn't seem very. Seems. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like the problem is like Patriots defense. You know they're gonna put up a pretty good performance this week probably, but that's like almost $10 more than the Packers. Packers play Minnesota. I mean, that doesn't seem like a great fantasy spot either. It's just really the price tag that stands out. But let's see. The Ravens are the highest projected one. That's an option, or we could go to Buffalo. They're a little bit.
Let's go Buffalo. Let's give ourselves a little extra cash. $13. Eli Manning's been known to throw a lame duck or two in his career.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry too much about the Giants' offense.
All the Tradevarius way. All right. So we got $28 left. Quarterback Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes. What's your take here? I'm personally at that price point. I'm kind of leaning towards a little bit of Lamar Jackson here.
So yeah, Lamar Jackson is my second highest. A $10 price discount from Patrick Mahomes. Last week we really didn't see him run, but I mean, the reason why is obvious. So, I mean, this
Yeah.
week it could be totally different. And he
And
was
also
locked up.
you have the Cardinals coming in. They average a 22 seconds per play, the highest in the NFL last week.
Yeah,
So that's got to be an uptick for him. 13-point favorites. I think he's got a pretty safe floor for sure.
I like that.
All right, $27 left. What do you think about $40 Saquon Barkley?
$40 in cash is like a huge investment.
Yep.
So I'm not sure he really justifies that, but I'd have to really like crunch it out to know for sure. Let me pull up these projections here again for running back. So he's the highest projected, but then Austin Eckler looks like a much better value at 28. So that could be the direction we go.
Let's do it.
All right, cool.
He's going to get some targets probably too. We got Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. You're not worried about that at all?
No, I mean, Eckler is going to probably play a lot if they're up. So I'm not that worried about it.
All right, $27 left to pop one more player in.
All right, well, we got two. We got the wide receiver and the flex.
All right then.
So we got the second highest projected wide receiver in there. We could go for, let's see.
Devontae Adams. That's a
Mark
tough number.
Devontae, yeah.
What about Julio? Just too pricey. Too pricey for cash.
Yeah.
What about Ty?
Ty. I like it. I mean, that's way underpriced for the kind of player he is, and even beyond like how bad Jacoby Brissett is, and Tennessee's not that good. So
Tennessee, bit of a funnel defense, tend to play better against the run as well. So I like that. $32 left over. My God, we could pretty much have anyone we want.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might go double tight
end.
Let's see. Let me open us up to running back and tight end. We can see who the best under $30 is. Or 32.
There, just pop in the salary.
So he is by far the highest projected at that price point.
All right. I'm all in. Let's fire him up.
All right.
There's your winning cash lineup.
Yeah, I like it. Actually, one guy I'm surprised we didn't get to is Sammy Watkins. He seems like he's kind of a play of the week, but $27, I guess they really did price him up already for Tyreek Hill being out.
Yeah, $3 ahead of Keenan Allen, $8 more than Edelman, $6 more than Hilton. That's a bit of a price to pay for Sammy Watkins. So
yeah, I think we made the right call here.
All right, GPP time.
All right, let's do it.
Are we game stacking or are we just stacking?
I think, well, yeah, that's going to be a question you have to answer this week because teams like New England are going to really pop if you do like a one stack of a team. But if you stack up the opposing side too, like trying to get a Miami player on your lineup is going to really stink. So maybe we try for a more competitive game here.
All right. So tops on my list. I think we already discussed the Rams. Price points makes it really difficult to fit them into a stack. My personal favorite, then, if you take that stack out, is going with the Chiefs and Raiders games. I think one of the things about that stack to me is that you can kind of find differentiation within the players itself. Like you can take an under-owned McCole Hardman. You could pair up Pat Mahomes with Damian Williams. You can find some leverage points within that stack. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, I think that stack is going to be really good. It is going to be pretty high owned unless you go to the Oakland side of it.
But I like the Oakland side too. I don't mind paying down for Derek Carr, pairing him up with Williams and Waller, and then you can just go ham on the Kansas City side.
I like that this week. And the reason why is like so many people are going to have Darren Waller and they're going to have Tyrell Williams. So if both of those guys have good games, you know who's going to be having an even better one is Derek Carr.
Absolutely. And Carr actually had one of his best games of the season in that shootout against Kansas City last year as well. So some precedents. The Kansas City secondary is appalling, one of the worst secondaries in the entire NFL. So, and then we already discussed their pace issue, the fact that they have not pace issue, but time of play. So everything pointing to the Raiders here. I think you could also go Josh Jacobs as well if you want to, but there are multiple ways to beat this Chiefs team for sure.
Cool. Put in Carr, Williams, Waller. Who should we get from Kansas City?
Well, we gotta go with the patented Osmo double tight end stack again, right?
All right, let's do it.
And then it's up to you. I don't know if you want to go Watkins, if you want to go Hardman for GPPs. I'm on Team Hardman, but I'm up for anything. Like I feel like maybe the recency bias will get Sammy Watkins overowned. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm fine going with one of the two, but McCole Hardman is so cheap that like that could make your roster just work even better. So I like that.
Awesome. All right, running backs, or do you continue on with this game stack, or is that enough from this game?
That's definitely enough from this game. Unless we wanted to put in Josh Jacobs, but that is it becomes more and more unlikely that they're going to be able to each have a outstanding performance. More guys you have,
right? All right. Are we going back to Gurley here at that price point as well for GPPs?
That's who I want to go to, man. How about you?
Yeah, I'm game.
We can get pretty much anyone we want, man. Like, we'll put a defense in here. Who do you think we should go with?
I think Buffalo's got some upside. Like, who do you think has the highest upside on this slate? Do you target defenses that are going to go up against more passing, higher pace, or not?
One that could be good. I see Houston is 21. They're going up against Gardner Minshew or whatever.
Gardner Minshew looks like Tom Brady, though.
I know, yeah. Like maybe next week the defense versus Jacksonville will be like $10, but we'll see. Bears versus Joe
Flacco on 10 days rest.
Wait, no, it's Case Keenum now. My bad. I keep getting confused. Right?
What's that?
Sorry. Denver. Oh, it is Flacco. My bad. That seems like a pretty high upside defense as well.
Sweet, I'm in.
All right, let's go with the Bears.
$32 left. What you doing over there, Saquon Barkley? You got someone else in mind?
I like it.
All right.
I think he's expensive enough.
$24 for our man Keenan Allen as well, if we want to get him in, or if you want to go with the big play upside of someone like Amari Cooper. We got T.Y. Hilton as well. Both those guys offer big play upside, but
yeah, let's take a gander over at our ownership projections here to make this call, because wide receiver going for a low-owned guy can make a break your lineup here. So let's see. We got
now most projected for the most ownership on Yahoo for us this week.
Yeah. So Cooper is also really high up there. One guy we could go to that's lower owned by a lot is T.Y. Hilton. What do you think about that?
I like it. He's going to get the targets. Funchess is out. He's got a solid matchup against that secondary, so sign me up.
All right, I think we got it here, man. Like, if you guys enter to this lineup, maybe you can split this 100K with us.
Yeah, we accept tips. So, all right, well, we got to get out of here. We got the deeper dive coming on pretty quick. That is at 5 o'clock Eastern. Adam and Chris have you covered with all your MLB needs. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're going to get out. We will see you next time at our usual time, which is – what time is that, Alex?
2 p.m. Eastern, right? Or no, 1 p.m. Eastern, sorry.
1 p.m. Eastern next week. But stay tuned to the Osmo YouTube channel to find out more, and we will see you back here next week. Good luck, everyone.